It's been a while since I uploaded, so I'm quite looking forward to this tonight. So, shamefully, I have not yet indulged in Winston Graham's Poldark. So I'm very excited to be bringing this to you tonight as we're embarking on this Poldark journey together. I'll read the blurb and then we can get started. Tired from a grim war in America, Ross Poldark returns to his land and his family. But the joyful homecoming he had anticipated turns sour. For his father is dead, his estate derelict, and the girl he loves is engaged to his cousin. However, his sympathy for the destitute miners and farmers of the district leads him to rescue a half-starved urchin girl from a fairground pool and take her home, an act which alters the whole course of his life. And just a little testament from the Guardian, from the incomparable Winston Graham, who has everything that anyone else has, then a whole lot more. Let's get started on the very first Poldark novel. Prologue. Joshua Poldark died in March 1783. In February of that year, feeling that his tenure was becoming short, he sent for his brother, from Trenwell. Charles came lolloping over on his great roan horse. One cold grey afternoon, and Prudy Painter, the lank-haired and dark-faced and fat, showed him straight into the bedroom, where Joshua lay bossed up with pillows and cushions in the big box bed. Charles looked askance round the room with his small watery blue eyes, at the disorder and the dirt, then lifted his coat-tails and subsided upon a wicker chair, which creaked under his weight. Well, Joshua, well, Charles, this is a bad business, bad indeed. When will you be about again, do you think? There is no telling. I fancy the churchyard will have a strong pull. Charles thrust out his bottom lip. He would have discounted the remark if he had not had word to the contrary. He hiccuped a little. Riding always gave him the wind these days, and was heartily reassuring. Nonsense, man. The gout in the legs never killed nobody. It is when it gets up to the head that it is dangerous. Joke tells me different, that there is other cause for the swelling, I am but half your size. Charles glanced down at the landscape of black embroidered waistcoat spreading away from under his chin. Mine is healthy flesh. Every man puts on weight in his middle years. I would not wish to be a yard of pump water like cousin William Alfred. Joshua lifted an ironical eyebrow, but said no more, and there was silence. The brothers had had little to say to each other for many years, and at this their little to say to each other for many years. Pardon me. And at this their last meeting, small talk was not easy to find. Charles the elder, and more prosperous, who had come in for the family house and lands, and most of the mining interests, head of the family, and a respected figure in the county, had never quite been able to get away from a suspicion that his younger brother despised him. Joshua had always been a thorn in his flesh. Joshua had never been content to do the things expected of him, enter the church or the army, or marry properly and leave Charles to run the district himself. Not that Charles minded a few laps, but there were limits, and Joshua had overstepped them. The fact that he had not been behaving himself for the last few years did not score out old grievances. As for Joshua, a man with a cynical mind and few illusions, he had no complaint against life or against his brother. He had lived one to the limit and ignored the other. There was some truth in his reply to Charles's next comment of, "Why, man, you're young enough yet. 2 years junior to me, and I'm fit and well." Arf. Joshua said, 2 years in age, maybe, but you've only lived half as fast. Charles sucked the ebony tip off his cane and looked sidelong about the room from under heavy lids. This damn war not settled yet. Prices soaring, wheat 7 and 8 shillings a bushel, butter 9p a pound. Wish the copper price was the same. We're thinking of cutting a new level at Grambler, 80 fathom. Maybe it will defray the initial outlay, though I doubt it. Been doing much with your fields this year? It was about the war that I wanted to see you, said Joshua, struggling a little farther up the pillows and grasping for breath. It must only be a matter of months, now before the provisional peace is confirmed. Then Ross will be home, and maybe I shall not be here to greet him. You're me brother, though we've never hit it off so well. I want to tell you how things are, and to leave you to look after things until he gets back. Charles took the cane from his mouth and smiled defensively. He looked as if he had been asked for a loan. I've not much time, you know. It won't take much of your time. I've little or nothing to leave. There's a copy of my will on the table beside you. Read it at your leisure. Pierce has the original. Charles groped with his clumsy swollen hand and picked up a piece of parchment from the rickety three-legged table behind him. When did you last hear from him? He asked. What's to be done if he doesn't come back? The estate will go to Verity. Sell if there are any purchases, it will fetch little. That's down in the will. Verity will have my share in Grambler too, since she is the only one of your family who has been over since Ross left. Joshua wiped his nose on the soiled sheet. was a little relieved that Joshua's request was no more than this, but slow to relax his caution. And a reverence on a deathbed struck him as reckless and uncalled for. Cousin William Alfred was visiting us the other day. He inquired for you. Joshua pulled a face. I told him how ill you was, Charles went on. He suggested that though you might not wish to call in the Reverend Mr. Odgers, maybe you would like a spiritual consolation from one of your own family. Meaning him. Well, he's the only one in orders now Betty's husband's gone. I want none of them, said Joshua, though no doubt it was kindly meant, but if he thought it would do me good to confess my sins, did he think I would rather tell secrets to one of my own blood? No, I'd rather talk to Odgers, half-starved little horny wink though he is, but I want none of them. If you change your mind, said Charles, send Judd over with a message. Arf! Joshua grunted. I shall know soon enough, but even there was something in it with all their pomp and praying. Should I ask him in this hour? I've lived my life, and by goodness I've enjoyed it. There's no merit to go snivelling now. I'm not sorry for myself, and I don't want anyone else to be. What's coming, I'll take, that's all. There was silence in the room. Outside, the wind thrust and stirred about the slate and stone. Time I was off, said Charles. These painters are letting your place get into a real mess. Why don't you get someone reliable? I'm too old to swap donkeys. Leave that to Ross. He'll soon put things to rights. Charles belched disbelievingly. He had no high opinion of Ross's abilities. He's in New York now, said Joshua. Part of the garrison. He's quite recovered from his wound. It was lucky he escaped the Yorktown siege. A captain now, you know. Still in the 62nd foot. I've mislaid his letter, else I'd show it you. Francis is a great help to me these days, said Charles. So would Ross have been to you if you was home instead of goosing around after Frenchmen and colonels. There was the other thing, said Joshua. Do you see or hear anything of Elizabeth Chineworth these days? After a heavy meal, questions took time to transmit themselves to Charles' brain. And where his brother was concerned, they needed an examination for hidden motives. Who is that? He said clumsily. Jonathan Chineworth's daughter. You know her. A thin, fair child. Well, what of it? Said Charles. I was asking if you'd seen her. Ross always mentions her. A pretty little thing. He's counting on her being here when he comes back. And I think in a suitable arrangement, an early marriage will steady him down, and she couldn't find a decenter man. Though, I say it as shouldn't. Being his sire. Two good old families. If I'd been on my feet, I should have gone over to see Jonathan at Christmas to fix it up. We did talk of it before, but he said, wait till Ross came back. Time I was going, said Charles, creaking to his feet. I hope the boy will settle down when he returns, whether he marries or no. He was keeping bad company that he should never have got into. You see the Joannas now, Joshua refused to be sidetracked by references to his own shortcomings. I'm cut off from the world here. I'm proud he has no ear for anything but scandal in Saul. Though we catch sight of him from time to time. Verity and Francis saw them at a party in Truro this summer. Charles peered through the window. Rot me if it isn't a joke. Well, now you'll have more company, and I thought you said no one ever came to see you. I must be on my way. He's only come quizzing to see how much faster his pills are finishing me off. That, or his politics, as if I care whether fox is in his earth or hunting Tory chickens. Have it as you please. For one of his bulk jars moved quickly, picking up hat and gauntlet gloves and making ready to be gone. At the last he stood awkwardly by the bed, wondering how best to take his leave, while the clip-clop of a horse's hoofs went past the window. Tell him I don't want to see him, said Joshua irritably. Tell him to give his potions to his silly wife. Calm yourself, said Charles. Aunt Agatha sent her love. Mustn't forget that. And she said you was to take hot beer and sugar and eggs. She says that will cure you. Joshua's irritation lifted, and Aunt Agatha's a wise old turnip. Tell her I'll do as she says, and tell her I'll save her a place beside me. Began to cough. God be with you, said Charles hardly. Sidled out of the room. Joshua was left alone. He had spent many hours alone since Ross went, but they had not seemed to matter until he took to his bed a month ago. Now they were beginning to depress him and fill his mind with fancies. An out-of-doors man, to whom impulse all his days had meant action. This painful, gloomy, bedridden life was no life at all. He had nothing to do with his time except to think over the past, and the past was not always the most elegant subject matter. He kept thinking of Grace, his long-dead wife. She had been his mascot. While she lived, all had gone well. The mine had opened and called after her brought rich results. This house, begun in pride and hope, had been built to 2 strong sons. His own indiscretions behind him, he had settled down, promising to rival Charles in more ways than one. He had built this house with the idea that his own branch of the family of Poldark should become rooted no less securely than the main Drenwith tree. With Grace had gone all his luck. The house, half built, the mine had petered out, and with Grace's death, his incentive to expand money and labour on either. The building had been finished off anyhow, though much remained unrealised. Then, when Wheel Vanity had closed down, also and little Claude Anthony had died, he could hear Dr. Joke and his brother talking at the front door. His brother's dusky, thickened tenor. Joke's voice deep and slow and pompous. Anger and impotence welled up in Joshua. The devil did they mean droning away on his doorstep? No doubt. Discussing him and nodding their heads together and saying, well, after all, what else could one expect? He tugged up at the bell beside his bed and waited, fuming, for the flip-flop of Bertie's slippers. She came at last, ungainly and indistinct, in the doorway. Joshua peered at her, short-sightedly, in the fading light. Bring candles, woman. Do you want me to die in the dark and tell those 2 old men to be gone? Prudy hunched herself like a bird of ill omen. Dr. Joke and Mr. Charles, your meaning, and who else? She went out, and Joshua fumed again. While there was the sound of a muttered conversation not far from his door, he looked around for his stick, determined to make one more effort to get up and walk out to them. But then the voices were raised again in farewells, and a horse could be heard moving across the cobbles and towards was Charles. Now for Joke. There was a loud rap of a riding crop on his door, and the surgeon came in. Thomas Joke was a Bodmin man who had practised in London, had married a brewer's daughter, and returned to his native county to buy a small estate near Seoul. He was a tall, clumsy man with a booming voice, thatch grey eyebrows, and an impatient mouth. Among the smaller gentry, his London experience stood him in good stead. They felt he was abreast of up-to-date physical ideas. He was surgeon to several of the mines in the district, and with the knife had the same neck-or-nothing approach that he had on the hunting field. Joshua thought him a humbug, and had several times considered calling into Dr. Price from Redruth. Only the fact that he had no more faith in Dr. Price prevented him. Well, said Dr. Joke, so we've been having visitors, eh? We'll feel better, no doubt, for our brother's visit. I've got some business off my hands, said Joshua. That was the purpose of inviting him. Dr. Joke felt for the invalid's pulse with heavy fingers. Cough, he said. Joshua grudgingly obeyed. Our condition is much the same, said the surgeon. Distemper is not increased. Have we been taking the pills? Charles is twice my size. Why don't you doctor him? You are ill, Mr. Poldark. Your brother is not. I do not prescribe unless called upon to do so. Joke lifted back the bedclothes and began to prod his patient's swollen leg. Great mountain of a fellow, grumbled Joshua. You'll never see his feet again. Oh, come, your brother is not out of the common. I will remember when I was in London. Off. Did that hurt? No, said Joshua. Joke prodded again to make sure. There is a distinct abatement in the condition of our left leg. There is still too much water in both. If we could get the heart to pump it away. I well remember when I was in London being called into the victim of a tavern brawl in Westminster. He had quarrelled with an Italian Jew who drew a dagger and thrust it up to the hilt into my patient's belly. But so thick was the protective fat that I found the knife point had not even pierced the bowel. A sizable fellow, let me see. Did I bleed? Did I bleed you when I was last here? You did. I think we might leave it this time. Our heart is inclined to be excitable. Control the choler, Mr. Poldark, and even temper helps the body to secrete the proper juices. Tell me, said Joshua, do you see anything of the Chinoettes? The Chinoettes of Cuscarn, you know. I asked my brother, but he returned an evasive answer. The Chinoettes, I see them from time to time. I think they are in health. I am not, of course, their physician, and we do not call on each other socially. No, but Joshua, Mrs. Chinoeth will have a care for that. I smell something shifty in Charles, he said shrewdly. Do you see Elizabeth, the daughter? She is about. There is an understanding as to her between myself and her father. Indeed, I had not heard of it. Joshua pushed himself up the pillows. His conscience had begun to prick him. It was late in the day for the growth of his long-dormant faculty, but he was fond of Ross, and in the long hours of his illness he had begun to wonder whether he should not have done more to keep his son's interest warm. I think maybe I'll send Judd over tomorrow, he muttered. I'll ask Jonathan to come and see me. I doubt if Mr. Joynoweth will be free. It's the quarters sessions this week, and that's a welcome sight. Prudy Painter came humbering him with 2 candles. The yellow light showed up her sweaty red face with its draping of black hair. had your physic, have you? She asked in a throaty whisper. Joshua turned irritably on the doctor. I've told you before, Joke. Pills I'll swallow, God help me. But draughts and potions I'll not face. I well remember, Joke said ponderously, when I was practising embodiment as a young man, one of my patients, an elderly gentleman who suffered much from strangury and stone. Don't stand there, Prudy, snapped Joshua to his servant. Get out. Prudy stopped scratching and reluctantly left the room. So you think I'm on the mend, eh? Joshua said before the physician could go on. How long before I'm up and about? A slight abatement, I said. Great care yet a while. We'll have you on your feet before Ross returns. Take my prescriptions regular and you will find they will set you up. How's your wife? Joshua asked maliciously. Again interrupted, Joke frowned. Well enough, thank you. The fact that the fluffy lisping